Welcome to Money Matriarchs with Dr. Laura Mattia, where we inspire you to harness the power of money for good. Together, we will hear motivational stories, meet encouraging role models, and explore financial strategies that can make a difference in our lives, our families, and beyond. We're in this together. Now, please welcome your host, Dr. Laura.
So Inga Chira is a money matriarch who thrives on planning and execution. I know that firsthand since we worked together on a couple of academic research papers. With a Ph.D. in finance and a passion for getting things done, she's carved out a successful career in finance, blending both teaching and research, as well as hands-on financial management. As a professor of finance at the University of North Florida, Inga shares deep knowledge with students while also managing personal finances and crafting detailed financial plans at her firm, Attainable Wealth, which, by the way, Inga also has a CFP. She's always looking for ways to bridge the gap between theory and practice and how financial planners can influence behavior in terms of the psychological background between savings and retirement. And even the research that we worked on together used a lot of psychological theory around motivation and what motivations financial advisors. So Inga, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here, Laura.
So, there are a few people who have tried to balance being a university professor as well as a practitioner. I've tried. When I was up north, I worked for Rutgers and I was a partner of a financial firm. And then when I moved down here to Florida, I actually was involved in creating the first degree program in Florida for CFP. Students get both their CFP and a degree in personal finance. And I started working as an advisor as well, and it was just too much. How do you do it?
I organize my time very well, but it is a lot. I agree with you. It is a lot because you have the university job and I'm on a tenure track position. So I still have to get tenure again because I moved to a new school a few years ago. And that requires a lot of research. It's not even the teaching, it's a lot of research that is required for the first few years to get tenure. And then you have the other part of your life, which is financial planning, and you have clients and you have to work with clients. In the last year, I hired somebody for the practice full time. So she's a great help. Okay. So that's really what helps. And I schedule my days or my week in university days and financial planning days or half days. So I can really compartmentalize it and schedule it in bulk or in chunks to make it easy on myself.
Right. Well, I know you're a very disciplined person and it has to come down to, you have these dueling passions and that's great. It's great you're able to do it because I do think that ability to also, when you talk to the students, really talk about real life things that you're dealing with in terms of a client or that type of thing, it can be very, very interesting. As finance professors, we always try to help students in their career and even talk to parents and help them help their children. And I am always surprised at how people don't understand the breadth of the financial world. So many people would come to me, and I'm sure it's the same case with you, and say, "Oh, I want to major in finance." It's like, well, okay. Do you want to major in finance so that you can go in the corporate world? Do you want to major in finance so you can be an investment banker? Do you want to be in personal finance? And we both have different PhDs. I mean, mine is in personal finance, which is kind of wedded in household economics and investments. And you're more the classic finance degree. I was wondering if maybe you could talk a few minutes about that so that people get a sense. I think the degrees, so I think we focus more, for example, on household behavior, where you focus more on the macro trends, on money supply and banking and those kinds of things. Is that correct? Or can you explain it a little?
Sure. So my PhD is in finance, and it was with a specialization in corporate finance. I did a lot of my early research and my dissertation, merger and acquisitions. Mm-hmm. And although I can't say that's a passion of mine. It's more of, well, a dissertation chair works in this field. If you want to work with them, that's what you do. And for the first 5 to 10 years of my academic career, I wrote a lot of papers on M&A. And then I remember a trip to New York. I was taking a student group to an investment fund to New York, and we spent a lot of time at different investment banks and having a conversation with somebody from the M&A department from one of the investment banks, and realizing how useless the research I'm doing is actually to the real world, because what they're doing is so far removed from what we are creating here. And I don't want to say this is research for everybody, but a lot of the academic finance research is just very far removed from everyday implementation.
Right.
It's a little different with financial planning. I transitioned to financial planning after years of working in corporate finance and also researching corporate finance. And now that I can compare the two, yes, I can definitely say financial planning has a daily impact on people. Corporate finance may have a small impact on somebody somewhere, but financial planning is just much more applied. And I feel like I can make a difference in people's life by researching this field, by talking about this field, compared to what I was doing before.
Right. But I think it's great that you have that initial background. And by the way, folks, for those of you who don't know what M&A is, it is mergers and acquisitions. So she was engaged in the whole process of helping create deals and, you know, what organizations you might want to actually merge with in terms of valuations and those types of things, which is really interesting work by itself, I do think. But yeah, to impact real people versus the corporate world, it can be very different. And so yeah, so you've explored, and I know that even not just in the research that you and I worked on, but in the research that you've done as well around retirement savings and so forth, you've gone to the psychology. So you're becoming a little bit more of a social scientist, even as opposed to just a hard data scientist.
Yes, but don't tell this to my friends in finance, because they do not take well to that.
Oh, I know. They still kind of look at personal finance as kind of the red-headed stepchild. I don't know if you can say that anymore.
Stepchild. Yeah, like a separate world. Yes. Although this is changing as well. I have seen papers at higher level journals that are really trying to focus on personal finance. A few years ago, the Journal of Finance actually had an editorial on this, that we have to pay more attention to it because it does make a difference. So hopefully that's changing a little bit. What I found success in publication-wise is pairing up with marketing PhDs or management PhDs and going that route a little bit, because they're much more willing to look at personal finance compared to some finance journals.
Very interesting. Okay. Yeah, and so I'd love to talk a little bit about research, since that is such an important part of your life. Of course, I do want to talk about our paper that we published in the Financial Planning Journal. We started, in fact, I have that journal. I'll just show it. We started, this actually was published in the winter of 2024, so just recently came out. We started this research, Inga, I think before your first child was born.
Yes, I remember when I met you in Boston at the FPA in 2015, and we had the first conversation about this.
Yeah. Okay. So we start, and I really do find research interesting. I remember talking to my PhD chair, and she was really, really adamant. You don't get a PhD because you just want to teach. Just want to teach. You can teach anyway without a PhD. You really want to do it because you want to do research. And I said, okay, fine, I'm game. And I like statistics. And all right, let's get involved in the research. But then I hit the painful process of actually getting it published. And that's a whole nother world. I was telling Inga before I actually got on this discussion with her this morning, I was looking at one of the comments that we got from one of the peer reviewers. It was 5 pages, Inga. 5 pages of this is wrong, and I want you to change this, and what is this? And some of it was just it was nonsensical. And thank goodness Inga had the tenacity to get this paper published, because I think I would have just given up.
I mean, I've been doing this for many years now. I've started publishing in 2008, so we're approaching almost 20 years now. And what I realize is that it's a game. It is a system that you have to participate if you want to publish. It doesn't matter how good your research is. If you do not appease the reviewer, that 1 or 2 or 3 people at the max, and these days it's more like 1 or 2, and do whatever they want you to do, this research is not getting published, no matter how impactful it may be. So when I got usually it's called a revise and resubmit, means here's a list of things that are wrong with this paper. Please fix them if you want to continue the process. I will just spend a lot of time addressing every single comment to the best of my ability to show that we actually try really hard to change the paper the way the reviewer wants to change the paper.
How many times do you find, what's the average that you have to revise and resubmit? It's not always just one time, right?
No, it's the longest I've had was 4 rounds, which got to a ridiculous point, like up to 4 rounds, and every round takes 2 to 5 months, depending on even 6 months. So like 2 years later, this research is so far removed from what I wrote originally, and it's so stale. It's like, why are we doing this? But the typical journal will give you 1, maybe 2 rounds.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was looking at our paper, and there were some. I mean, I was glad that you went back and found some more recent literature to quote, because some of the literature that we quoted originally was, okay, 2013. And so you found things that were much more recent to say, okay, it's continuing, the same story is continuing and so forth, which that's also difficult. It's not only you trying to appease them, but okay, do I need to add additional stuff now because it's a year later or 2 years later? What else has come out? So you've actually been an editor as well.
Yes, so I was the academic editor for the Journal of Financial Planning for 2 years, which is slightly different from other editorial jobs. And I've been an associate editor on a few other financial planning journals now.
And what does that entail?
When a paper comes in, the overall editor, the editor-in-chief, looks at the paper and decides which associate editor can handle this paper the best based on the research interests. So if there is a paper that comes in the financial planning profession, for example, it may end up in my hands because I've published a lot, I've researched a lot in this field. And then I am the one who has to decide, is this paper going to go to reviewers? Is it good enough to go to reviewers, or are we going to kill it right here before it even makes it out? And if it's good enough, then I have to find the 2 or 3 reviewers, send it to them and convince them to review it.
So you do the first screening?
Yes, we do the first screening.
What percentage of papers do you say, no, this isn't even going past me?
Well, it actually I'm the second screening because the editor-in-chief does the first screening. So I don't know how many got cut at that point, but from the ones that makes it to my hands, a lot of them will go out because they have done a very good job upfront to even send only the good papers for review to me. So maybe 50 to 80% I will send out to reviewers, depending on the journal.
Okay. But there's still 50 to 80% is still not 100.
Yeah, and I don't get a lot of papers. Like a good editor-in-chief won't send you too many papers, so maybe 1 or 2 per quarter. And then from those, maybe half to 2/3 will make it out. And then it doesn't mean they're going to get published. Depending what the reviewer sends us back, we will decide, is it a revise and resubmit? Do they go back to do more work, or do we accept it? Which, by the way, I don't think ever happened in my life. No, it happened once. I got an acceptance as is, and I did not know to do it myself. But usually it's like revisions and revisions until everybody's happy.
Right. So this is not for the faint of heart to publish research. I'm very proud of the research that I finally actually have published. It's interesting in this profession. I don't know if you get the same thing, but I also am oftentimes like I'll be quoted in, I don't know, the investment news or, some other kind of even AARP or some kind of just
well-known publication.
Yeah. Right. And people will be like, oh, that's great. And they're so excited. And then I'll tell them I'm published in the Financial Planning Journal, this research, and they just kind of, their eyes go cross-eyed and they're like, what is this?
Yeah, it is pretty funny because there's research that actually influenced some laws on how things change in this country. And like nobody cares about that. The feedback I get from people is, oh, I read your article, you being quoted in the New York Times. I'm like, well, I'm happy about that, but it really doesn't change the world here.
Well, in theory, we are addressing, we're adding to the body of knowledge. And so even if our research is not important, it's now in the scholarly tombs where people will refer to our research and hopefully build on it and do things with it. And so, our research incorporates the most recent motivational theory. It's The actual title of it is Why Are There So Few Women in Financial Services Industry? That's what we were focused on. That was our, I guess, our problem that we wanted to try to solve. And so one of the things that you do when you're doing research is you need to identify where you think there's a gap in the actual body of knowledge. And so we were trying to solve that. And so I thought, Inga, maybe we could talk a little bit about some of the prior research that was out there and the literature that was out there, and why did we feel like there was a problem? Like, why did we think there was a gap in the knowledge? I don't know. You want to start?
I can start and then you can keep going with it. I mean, this is the topic in financial planning. A lot of the topics, they're relatively new because the discipline is kind of new. We don't have 80 years of research. It started maybe 20, 30 years ago. And maybe in the early to mid 2000s, we started seeing papers about why there are so few women minorities in financial planning. And to put in perspective, the number has been about 20 to 25%, and it has not moved for 20 years now, no matter who does what.
Can I interrupt? All right.
Sure.
So the number of CFPs definitely is somewhere around 24% or somewhere in that number. But there's also, when people have looked at other kinds of, that's CFPs, which is the educated woman that's gone through the process and wants to do financial planning as a fiduciary and is more interested in financial planning, comprehensive financial planning, than money management. When we look at the broader group, where it includes people that are in money management and those types of things, it's lesser, right?
It's even less. Yep, it is even less.
I think somewhere in our paper, we quoted a number that's somewhere around 16%. One group actually identified 16. And then if you actually even look at some of the actual people that manage portfolios,
it's even lower.
Like CFA.
It's a very male industry.
Right. And then I actually remember seeing, and I don't know if we included in this paper, that the people that do portfolio management, active management is done by more men. The women get the more passive management, which is kind of interesting as well.
Yeah, very, very few women, and especially as you go up through the ranks, you have a lot of women that may start in this industry being client service associates. But as we go towards advisors and then becoming managers and directors, you get less and less women. And that number has not changed for many years. So we started with this idea of like, okay, let's look into it. Mm-hmm. There was some research done before, and you saw a lot of the arguments being made that just didn't make any sense to us. Like the argument of women are bad at math. I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's it. And the life balance, work-life balance argument that has been proven by the Australian research not to be true. Like Kristen Neck, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that is not really it. This is a good industry to be in if you want to have a life-work balance.
Right. Well, I mean, the whole idea that financial services and being a financial advisor or planner is different than being a medical doctor or a lawyer. Or, I mean, we're able to see that there are plenty of women in those professions. Why are they not in the finance profession? So yeah, it didn't add up, this whole work-life balance. And I still see that today in discussions. Oh, it's about work-life balance. No, it's not.
No, this is a great industry for work-life balance. It's way better than corporate finance, I can tell you that, or investment banking.
Right. Because you'd be much more flexible as long as you're satisfying and connecting with your client, which is ultimately the person you want to make happy, as opposed to having to go into a corporate environment and deal with all that. There's a lot of reasons why, I think, but yeah, it's great for women. As a matter of fact, I would argue too, and this is not part of our paper, but I think it's an important thing to mention, just in case there are some young ladies listening to this, or moms or dads that are trying to encourage their young daughters to pursue a career, or even a career changer, that not only is this a great profession because of the flexibility that's around it. But it's also a very rewarding profession because we do make a difference in people's lives. We can help people make better choices and better decisions that are aligned with their values and their goals. And it can be very rewarding as opposed to just making money. You also feel like you've done good.
Yeah, absolutely. You helped the client this morning and you helped the client yesterday, and you made a difference in how they live their lives.
Right. So, okay. So if we are saying all of this, we're saying that clearly it's not work-life balance. And by the way, it's got a lot of attractive features to it to attract women. Oh, and I should also say it's a decent paying job too. And, there's a lot of uh, perks there. If that's the case, why then did we decide that we think women are not coming into this? And there's the women being attracted to the profession, and then there's women being attracted and leaving, which you just brought up, which is a whole nother thing. Women exit out much quicker than men do.
And I will give you credit for bringing this psychology part into it, because at the time I was not doing any research in corporate psychology. It's saying like there is this theory called self-determination theory. And we can look at it because I've done some work with it and see the internal motivations of women and why they want to enter or stay in this profession.
Yeah. And so a lot of times when we talk about motivational theory, many people studied either in their psychology class or heard about maybe Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which was a theory that came out, I want to say in the 80s.
60s? No,
okay.
I would say even before that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. And it's a very compelling, interesting theory. His whole pyramid and the lining up, it seems to make some sense. The problem is that when you go to the actual studies that have tried to incorporate that theory, it doesn't seem to hold water. The empirical data is just not backing it up. And so Inga and I wanted to find a theory that was much more robust. And we came across this self-determination theory, which has been used in a lot of different areas. Some of it is not even focused on job satisfaction, but we wanted to apply it to job satisfaction.
And it worked really well. We were able to explain a lot of the results by looking at the internal motivation.
And when we talk about job satisfaction, it really is a multidimensional concept. It's how employees feel about their job. It's about a positive emotional state. It's about feeling involved. A couple of people have in our lit review, I know, pointed to these ideas of, well, no, you need to feel like your work is meaningful, for example. And so a lot of times people kind of overlook that aspect of things. I've always tended to think that women feel like their work has to be more meaningful than men. But I don't think we really found that necessarily, right?
No, I don't think we did. No, we did not compare, at least not in this paper, the men versus the women. We have done this in the other paper with Mark,
Right.
but we have not done it here. So we did not have a control group of men to be able to make that claim. But these results did not come in the group of women we interviewed, which was a lot of women.
Right. But even in the paper that we did with Mark, we did not really find a
We did not
gender
find that.
difference.
No, we did not. It actually was quite equal between the two genders.
Right. So I initially thought that maybe we would find a difference, that maybe women would be more, because the three elements that really make up self-determination theory at a very basic level. I mean, we could get into a lot of detail that could lose a lot of people very quickly about intrinsic motivation, is autonomy, wanting to feel like you can make a difference, that you have choice, right? I mean, how else would you define autonomy?
Yeah, like feeling like you have a say in your own life and your own work.
Right. And so I thought that would be possible. Well, I thought that that might be gender neutral. Everybody wants to feel like they have some independence there. But then, and then competence is another one.
Yep.
Um, and that, when we say competence, how would you define that?
How women see themselves being good at their jobs.
Okay. Now, do you, even that, just competence. I also thought perhaps maybe women were more concerned about that than men, because women are always trying to overcome the idea that maybe, the imposter syndrome. Women
Yep.
still have this idea that they're, even if they've gotten a zillion degrees and they've done some things, that maybe it was just luck and they shouldn't be there. Um, and that's been shown to be the case, but we didn't really see a gender difference there so much.
And then there's also the third one, the relatedness, and we saw a lot of results in there.
Right. But okay, so do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So the relatedness is how if seeing other females in your group, whether that's your firm or the peer comparison group, feeling like the firm is focused on client retention, or you are focused on client retention, and feeling like you're included in the decisions.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. And so just on a like even higher level, I would have thought that definitely women care more about, there's work that says that women are more interested in people and males are more interested in things. And I thought, okay, this would be more important to women. On the testing of the genders, it wasn't necessarily more important to women. It was equally important to women. The question wasn't who is it more important to? The question is who really was more, had that need fulfilled.
Yes. And what we find is that when women are given the opportunity to be responsible for client acquisition and to feel like there are other women around and they feel like part of the group, they're much more willing to stay not only in their firm, but also in the industry.
Okay, so that's one of the first things that the industry should actually walk away with thinking, because oftentimes, we just talked about, even at the portfolio level, the women are put in positions managing portfolios that aren't as important to the firm as the ones that are actively managed. When women come into this industry, they're often, okay, you can be a client service manager, you can do things that are more soft. We'll put the men in more important roles. And by the way, have them go out and meet clients and so forth, which are the roles that are really more coveted and more, looked to as these are the people that are making the difference in the business. And so if you want women to feel more autonomy and more engaged and more valued, you need to be including them in these more active roles like client acquisition.
Yeah, and participate in firm decision making. Saying that we have women in the firm when that a client specialist picking up the phone and that's where the role stops is not really encouraging them to be in charge of the firm.
Yeah, that's it's kind of interesting. Even the firm, if they happen to be listening to this, I'm sorry, but even the firm that I'm currently connected to, they'll say that they have X percentage women in the firm. They're not advisors. They're in corporate roles. They're doing a lot of, HR stuff and marketing stuff and those things, but not in the bread and butter of what makes the
Yeah.
business important.
And it actually, I see it in daily interaction with students who are deciding where to go for their jobs. They do pull their website. And like I had a few extremely intelligent, driven young women who finished their undergrad with a CFP and they're looking at competing offers. And one of them came to me and said, look at this picture. Like there's 12 white old males here. I would be the first advisor female. Like, why would I go there if I'm the only one when there's somebody else who seems to be more on top of it?
Right. So somebody could say, well, gee, that there's so much opportunity there because um, because there isn't a woman, and hopefully
Mhm.
they recognize it. But you are going to be the pioneer at that firm. And so, helping them to continuously support you in the way that you need to be supported might be more difficult.
Mhm.
So I agree with them. I would question that as well. And, there are a lot of women that also, young ladies that have looked to even go into their own firms. I think that, and we haven't, I don't think we've looked at this. I don't know, maybe um, when we look at individual RIAs that are one person, maybe two people for firms, I wonder if there's a higher percentage of women in those firms where they have autonomy.
So we haven't looked in this paper, but I know this from talking to people at XY who left their firms or went to open their own RIA, that this, for some women, this is a driving reason to go on their own, to be able to create the firm they want to create without being told how to run it.
Right. Because I mean, that's one of the things as well. I think that we talk about in an outgrowth of this paper, beyond the, getting women involved in acquisition, also having women in leadership or influential roles um, gives a positive perception to the women, and that firms really need to do better at positioning women in those roles so that women do feel compelled and they feel that relatedness, like, oh yes, I can succeed. um,
And the CFP board is doing quite a lot of work on this. They're trying to understand the same problem and coming up with reports, and they do find that it matters who is around you.
right. Well, I mean, just a general feeling that you feel like you belong. I mean, everybody, I mean, that comes actually from Abraham Maslow's work about the whole feeling of belongingness. We all have a need as human beings to feel like we belong. And if you feel like you're kind of just a sidekick, or you're not really part of the team, that's not going to be very comforting. You're not going to enjoy your job. That's not a job that anybody's going to feel satisfied in. So, um, even the ideas of, and one of the things that when I worked in the corporate world, before I even went into personal finance, I was trying to mentor some of the young ladies. And I only learned this kind of later on in my career, not earlier on, when I was younger and I had children, probably way too young. Um, I would make it a point, first of all, not telling anybody that I had children. But when everybody went out for drinks after work, I would scramble home. I would not work I would work during lunch. Everybody would go to lunch. I would work during lunch to make sure that I was using my time as efficient as possible so that I could deal with my family. And I did myself a tremendous disservice because part of my job was making sure that I connected with the team and that they knew who I was and that we were working more effectively together. And I didn't do it.
And that social element is very important. A lot of what happens with the firm relationships and who you get connected and how your career trajectory goes is determined in the social interactions. It's not at your cubicle.
Right. And so while a woman might feel that she's doing the right thing because she's just working hard and putting her nose to the grindstone, she might not be. And so one of the things that firms can do is they could create a more um, feeling of relatedness through team building, where doing some things that foster a sense of relatedness, getting them to their team to build a culture where women feel more part of the team as opposed to an outsider.
Yeah.
Um, what else? I mean, I think, you know, when we talk about, intrinsic motivation and some of those other things, because the paper gets a little bit into this. We actually did this more, I think, with the other paper that we published on the, like, what really motivates people in terms of autonomy. And we looked at intrinsic motivators, what personally motivates me to go to work, and extrinsic motivators like pay and promotion and bonuses and those kinds of things. And I think we found that intrinsic motivators were really even much more important than people realize, that it's not
Yes.
just about pay. And so, how do we make sure that people feel like their values and what drives them on a individual basis is really important to the team and the firm that they're working with? How does their job how is it meaningful? How do they actually connect that way? And people might say, well, that has to be, it's either there or it's not. But I think that firms can help women see, along with the men, how their jobs are connected. Now, again, if they're not doing the important work for the firm, um, it's going to be harder for them to connect that. So somehow, if you're going to put women in these positions that are less uh, inclusive, how do you make those positions? How do you tie them and make them see how important those roles are? Because clearly they're still important to the overall business.
But they're less visible. So
Right.
if you don't see them, you can't reward them and you cannot make them feel more included.
Right. So the industry needs to kind of focus more on that. Yeah, and whether, the work-life balance stuff and all that stuff that, are we going to have changing tables in the bathrooms or places for women to pump their milk or whatever? I mean, that's all kind of interesting, but it's not really what's going to keep women at your firm.
Yeah, that's correct. It's a great perk to have, just like money is important. We find that money is important. Of course, we want to get paid more, but it's not the primary driver of what keeps you motivated in your job.
Right. Right. Okay. So, yeah, I guess what would you say, like, really, if you wanted to sum it up and tell you were talking to the, president of a major financial firm, you're talking to, I don't know, pick one, Morgan Stanley, whatever. What would you tell them is the number one thing that you think that they should do to inspire more women to come to their firm and also stay with their firm?
Show them that there is a way to become responsible for your own client, for client acquisition, to go through the ranks and feel like you're equal on the top, not just at the entry level.
Wonderful. Yes, I agree. And also the recognition.
The recognition that you matter, your job matters.
Right, right. So I think that this paper, is important. And I hope that, do you know if this, for example, the CFP board is doing work on this? Do you know if this was published in the Journal of Financial Planning. Do you know if they've referenced it or if
I don't know, because they do their on a different cycle and they have like this, it's more like survey trying to collect data than an actual academic paper. So I have not seen the newest round of research they have done on this yet.
Okay. All right. So if you were going to, one of the things that I'd like to do is kind of just leave it off with any kind of recommendation that you might have. We said what you might say to the leadership at one of these firms, but how about to a young lady that's looking to start out in this field? I know that you've given a lot of mentorship and guidance to these women. What would you tell them that they should do? They're embarking on their career.
You should definitely pursue this career. It is a wonderful career for women. It would be great if you can figure out which path within the field you want to take, because there is a lot of different ways to work.
Yeah.
You can go to a big company like a Fidelity. You can go to a small RIA. You can open your own firm, although you shouldn't do it in the first 5 years of your professional life. But talk to as many other women who have a little older at this point, who have done this, and you'll be surprised how willing they are to talk to you and give you advice. It is okay to go and harass somebody on LinkedIn to talk to you, even if you don't know them, because women want to help other women. So don't feel embarrassed or hesitant to reach out.
That's right. And I do have to say, if you do try to link in with either Inga or myself and ask us some questions, please bear in mind that we're not staring at our LinkedIn all the time, and that sometimes it might take us a while to get back, and or things pile up where so many people are, because I don't know about you, but I get a lot of inquiries about all kinds of things. And some of it's like, well, sales oriented and that type of thing. So sometimes a, a question can be buried, but be a little tenacious. Yeah, and make sure, because we do want to help. We just sometimes get bogged down. I mean, clearly, Inga's a researcher, she's a teacher, she's a financial advisor. I have some additional of my own types of things that bog me down. So just try to get a hold of us, and
Reach out. We will try to do our best to reply to you. And if you don't hear from us, reach out again.
Right. So Inga, thank you so much first of all, for taking this research forward, because it would not have gone forward if it was just in my hands. I did not have that tenaciousness to get that through. And thank you for doing that. Thank you for sharing it with our listeners today, and just thank you for everything you do.
It was a pleasure to be here, Laura.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And if anybody wants to reach out to you, first of all, should we give your wealth attainment?
Yeah, so the easiest way to get in touch with me is Inga at attainablewealthfp, like financialplanning.com. That's an email you can reach me out, or on LinkedIn under Inga Timmerman.
And can you just, I'm sorry, before I say goodbye, can you just say something about the type of clientele that you work with? And
yeah, so at this point, we are working exclusively with other academics.
Okay.
Nika and I are working with other professors. She works with me in young professors who just finished their PhDs. I do more of a transitional work between jobs, getting out of academia. We have a podcast called Academics and Our Money, so you can listen to it there. And if you're a professor considering a new job or need some help with financial planning, we'd like to talk to you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Inga. All right. Well, again, another wonderful money matriarch who's doing great things. Thank you so much, Inga. We will talk. Take care. Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Money Matriarchs with Dr. Laura Mattia. If you like what you've heard and found it helpful, please like and subscribe to the show so we can inspire all women to harness the power of money for good. Stay inspired, and we hope you'll join us again in the next episode of Money Matriarchs.